I have been overwhelmed by AI, automation, how everything is moving so fast, and I have been trying to learn everything I can learn to not get lost in there. But unfortunately, I had always this feeling that every time I'm catching up with something, there is something new appearing at the same time, and I needed to also jump into that new thing and maybe not master the other things that I was already learning, and then jump to the other thing, come back to the others. I am an AI consultant and I need to give valuable advice to businesses, and this is why I thought I needed to learn everything. So it's only when Andrej Karpathy, who is also the AI head of Tesla and he worked also in OpenAI, said that he was also overwhelmed, then I noticed, yeah, I wasn't alone, and let's approach this differently. So this is why in this video, if you're watching it in 2026, you will definitely get a lot of value to understand AI and automation, the landscape, the systems thinking, and also the pattern recognition, in order to stay ahead of the curve. So let me start where actually my journey has started. I started learning AI with ChatGPT like everyone. I was just prompting it and getting something, writing an email, getting a summary, or just asking some general questions for my own knowledge. In parallel with ChatGPT, I was also noticing these automation platforms. There was Make, there was Zapier, and there is NA10. And by then, they were all present because it was 2023. And I was trying things here and there and learning automation because I saw also their value as someone coming from a software background, that you can use low code and no code and still use API power to communicate with one app or the other, or to automate the emails, the leads, etc. This was already possible before even the generative AI technology appeared, but I started really learning it with AI together. And this is why it became like a big thing, because generative AI kept evolving, and those automation tools as well as generative AI tools became more powerful. They added tools and functionalities to these automation platforms as well. Now that you have an introduction of how all of this started for me, maybe you are also starting your journey, or you are already in intermediate level, or like me, you are trying to keep up with everything that is appearing because you are deeply into the AI business, or maybe you are a business who really want to get value out of generative AI or don't know how. So if you are one of these people, this video is definitely for you. So let's now break down and understand the whole system and pattern together. So let's first understand the evolution of automation. Since 1960, since there was hardware and then software came, there was this application programming interface already from IBM, from Microsoft, SAP in enterprise solutions, but they were proprietary. So it means that, for example, IBM has some technology and there is some other software outside of IBM that needs to communicate with IBM software or hardware in order to have some automation in place in business. It meant that we needed to develop this API in order to be able to communicate between two systems. And this was very time consuming. It needed a developer. It's only possible with code and internal systems in general. So it needed a lot of effort and money. Then, starting from 2000 to 2011, there have been other software platforms like Salesforce, who was actually API first product. So they were more focused on getting their product web-based and really API first when they developed it in a way that to connect it to another software, it will be very easy and not so time consuming by a developer. There was also products appearing that are just API focused, like Twilio, for example. And with this, APIs became more and more accessible by the public. Starting from 2011, this is where the automation revolution happened, when Zapier appeared, and it was the first one. It was a low-code, no-code automation platform where people like me and you, so business people or functional people who don't know anything technically, they can actually build some automations for marketing campaigns, for some email automation, for some lead capture, etc. So this was already there, and we can just build the workflow. So it was a process that we go through, the triggers, sequence, action, data to manipulate, etc. All of this became possible. And then there was also Postman, where people are actually testing until today the automations, if they are working or not. When we make an API call or HTTP request, people can test it in Postman. And then there is Make, which appeared also almost at the same time in 2012. And there we can also make automations, but it enabled also more control into the automation itself. And it had also a different pricing system, so it was more cost effective than Zapier, and it had more control into the technical stuff of automations. In 2019, NA10 started as a company, as also an automation platform, and it evolved to the NA10 that we know today. And I think from my perspective, at least, that I used all these platforms, I think the most platform that makes sense to go with in order to build agentic automations today is NA10. So all of these automation platforms have been there already a long time ago. But generative AI, when it came in since 2023, it kept reshaping these automation platforms. And each one of them was actually building whole systems around generative AI to be able to use it. This is why also I said NA10 for me looks like the best tool, because it's updating also weekly, and whenever there is a new thing, new technology, they are already testing it and they already make an update around it in order to be able to use it directly in their nodes, in their automation system. So that since 2023, just 3 years ago, it kept evolving not year by year, but weekly there were new things. So there was first a new MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is a way to integrate generative AI models with other applications. So it's based on these MCP server client thing that allows these models to use the whole application, which enables MCP protocol without the need to call each function individually through API calls. So it's like big revolution in this world, and Anthropic started with it, and it starts to become a standard. This is just one thing. There was also the RAG technology, etc. We will talk about this later. But first, let's focus on what are the most important shifts since then. And one of the most important shifts, also Andrej Karpathy spoke about it, is vibe coding. So he officially stated it in 2025, and he mentioned that, yeah, everybody can code today with vibe coding, talking in English to Cursor or to whatever vibe coding platform, and you can build the whole application by yourself. But of course, the engineering concepts are still important there. It's possible today to build application as non-developers as well. One other thing that is also very important is the vibe automation, where we can build actually whole files, whole automation files, and download them and bring them to NA10 and have our automation workflow ready there just by describing it in something like Claude. This is a screenshot where I asked Claude actually to build an automation for me for a specific process for a bakery, and he just did it, and I had my template exactly as I described it. This is why also I think the free templates thing that everybody is sharing to download and then upload to NA10, you try to adapt it to our business process, I think it's becoming obsolete, because now anyway, if you know exactly and clearly your business process, you can just talk to Claude and get it to build for you the workflow that you need for your business, and then you have the specific template that you need. You can just download it from Claude and upload it to NA10, and you can then fine-tune it and change it a little bit to tweak it, to add maybe your credentials. What we are also seeing in the platforms themselves, as said, they are changing so fast. So they are adding each time new technology, a new tool, a new node to use with AI, with evaluations, with guardrails, for example, with data. Okay, so the pattern recognition now. So I talked a little bit about the automation evolution and what we have already available today. The bad news is that these things will just keep evolving. It will not stop evolving. It will only get better and get more efficient. And it's also accelerating, because these things together, they become more powerful. And each time we are building something with AI, at least it's my feeling, each time I'm automating something for a client, I feel like maybe I can do it better based on what is already available there. And this thing scares me when I think about the possibilities that are still coming because of these things when they come together, all of these concepts. The good news about it, from the other hand, it's that we don't really need to know everything, and we don't really need to imprison maybe ourselves in this learning loop and find ourselves each time overwhelmed with the technology. We just need to recognize the patterns and understand what really matters and what will always matter in a business context. And these are the 3 simple questions that we need to ask first. Before deep diving into any tool, we need to understand the why. Why are we automating something? Because if we are automating something just because we found a free template from NA10 that we downloaded and that we want to try something with it, maybe this is not the best approach. We need to first think about something that is costing us a lot of money, that is repetitive to do every day, so a process that can be easily automated without complexity, and then we can be sure that we have value out of it, so we can start automating that. And this is where what comes. We shouldn't really focus on complex processes. This is a killer also for automations, and even more dangerous when we are talking about generative AI, because we don't always control the output out of it. So how to automate and use AI is really the question where everybody gets into the learning mode and try to learn everything he can about how to automate the best. He might look into concepts to learn or courses to take. And this is where really I feel like it's a killer to innovation and to advancement in this field specifically, because of the light speed evolution we are witnessing before our eyes. When we are approaching this, we should adopt a systems thinking that will win each time, even though that we cannot master everything. Once we identified the why and what we want to automate, there is no universal solution for it. We can do it in multiple platforms with multiple tools, in 100 different ways in one platform like Anytend. And it can be so valuable if we do it this way. It can be invaluable if we do it another way. And this is why we need to transform this into systems and pattern thinking, rather than getting stuck and maybe not getting value at all. How do we get confident around this misleading how? And actually, this is where the system thinking and pattern recognition comes into place. First, there is this fact that there are concepts that are important to know in the AI space. And these concepts will not change for a long time. They will stay there. They are here to stay. Understanding what is an MCP, Model Context Protocol, Retrieval Augmented Generation or RAG concept, understanding memory, agents, commands, they are key terms to understand. We don't need to deep dive each time to everything to know everything, but we need to know the minimum in order to use it efficiently. So if we are deep diving into MCP or APIs, they are there to enable, to allow apps to communicate together, or to allow these models maybe to execute some functions or tools. And this is also important to know. There is also memory, agents, RAG, etc. So I collected all these concepts in one document for you, which is one of the resources I want to share with you, and you will find it in the description. It's very simple. You can just read through each concept and understand it immediately with a very clear description of what it does. Another thing is that the way to keep up with the technology has become also quite straightforward, honestly, because we can actually search in the internet with an automation about some concepts that are important for us, some tools that are important for us. And for me, there were 5 tools that are very important, which are ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Anytend, and Perplexity that I use every day. So I decided to make a workflow around it in Anytend and get the most recent data about them weekly, because weekly there are updates, yes, about these technologies. So I get weekly a summary of the updates that happened in those platforms, and I will also share with you the link to the Google Sheet, so in case you are using any of these tools, you can just save it and you will have the update weekly as I have it around these tools. I'm also sharing my workflow, by the way, from Anytend in my free community, so if you want to join, the link is in the description. In order to master the automation, there are also notes that matter. I broke them down for you into 21 features that are important to know in Anytend. As of today, of course, the 16th of January 2026. And these notes are all around 5 main things. First, it's the trigger. It's when my workflow needs to be triggered based on an action that is happening on some external applications that I have. Does it needs to happen on a time-based, like my workflow that shares updates from AI providers? It happens weekly without me triggering everything, so it happens automatically that it captures the data for me. There is also the control, which is an if-then function. So the control is really the way that we want to process our workflow, saying that if something happens, if I receive an email from this person, maybe it should trigger a notification for me in some platform. If there is some update with these platforms, please fill out the Excel sheet for me. Otherwise, don't fill it out. Say that there is nothing yet. Those are ways that we can control what's happening or not happening in our workflow. And the data part is maybe the most important 2001, where we are defining data literally in n8n. We can just define strings, numbers, any kind of data that we can use for our own workflow. We can also transform the data, or we can even define data tables today there. So we can have our databases with data with column and rows. We can also consume data from databases. We can get the data sources there in order to be read by the AIs. For example, we have data in our drive and we want to connect it, we want to create data. All of this is possible there. So data creation and manipulation is maybe the most important part, because we need workflows, automations in the end in order to get some data processed. The AI nodes, this is a huge thing in n8n. So there are agent actually nodes that you can create and use the tools that you need. For example, call a database or add some memory to the agent, or get the agent to do some research for you and use what model that you need from any generative AI platform. You can also define guardrails. You can do evaluations to compare different models. And the fifth part is integration. And this is where MCP, Model Context Protocol, or API calls will come into place in order to call one application or the other, or the tool by the AI. So all of this is through integrations, because you have your nodes there, you have what instructions you are giving to your AI and the sequence of your nodes, and you have also to communicate with external applications, and this is where integrations through HTTP request calls will happen in order to call one application to do one action or the other. There is also resources that I shared about it that you will have access to in the description as well. And it describes in details the most useful nodes in n8n you will ever probably need. Okay, I talked about some tools, I talked about some technology and concepts that you maybe need to know in order to be able to deal with AI, right? But understanding the systems around it is more important than the tools. Actually, by nature, generative AI technology is non-deterministic. It means that the same input can actually give you a different output. If I enter exactly the same prompt, it might summarize it in one way for me now, but if I enter exactly the same prompt later, it might summarize it in a very different way. But this is not a bug. It's literally a feature in generative AI tools, because it allows you to be creative. And in order to be able to use that effectively in a business context, we also need to use a deterministic nature of workflow automations as well, because we need some systems to control where the output is going. We need to be sure that this output is good, so we need to evaluate and go further, and also have a human in the loop maybe in order to be sure that our agent is not doing something wrong. And the routing thing and the coding part is also important. And also these automation platforms, there is also some code nodes you can enter. You can even use generative AI to generate the code itself, but the code will have a deterministic nature. It will have some rules that it needs to follow without being created. This is where the magic happens. The generative AI node, most probably in most useful workflows, it will just be one node in the whole workflow. And the others will be of deterministic nature in order to handle your business process efficiently. I also put a link to my LinkedIn post around the deterministic, non-deterministic nature of AI that you can also check to also understand the concept better in a business context. My LinkedIn became literally a newsletter if you want to follow. I always share about useful AI use cases for businesses there. Then there is also another resource that I would share with you, which is understanding the 4 levels of adoption of AI in businesses. Understanding prompt engineering, building application, automating, and connecting your unique functional agents that will undeniably evolve into your valuable AI agents. So you can click the link that appears here. This is how the video looks like. With this shared, we arrive to an end to our video. I hope that you got some value out of it. Start using the resources that I shared with you today. So I made them in a way that they would be very easy to follow and understand. And if you understand the system thinking, the patterns, the tools that matter that we talked about today, you are ahead 99% of the people in this space, and you are not behind. Andrej said it. We are all behind anyways. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value out of it. Get the resources in the description. Start building. Join my community if you want access to more resources in the future. Leave a comment and let me know if you are also feeling overwhelmed with the technology, and if this video also helped you to understand the landscape. And make sure you subscribe if you liked the video. This will help me a lot, and see you next time.